25.16 has resulted in a ton of new strong champions emerging, so we've got a lot to cover in this one as we provide you guys with an update to the solo queue tier list for every single role. And let's be honest, picking the best champions is fun, but is that really enough on its own? I don't know about you, but locking in Volibear just because he's OP tier doesn't really help if you're lacking knowledge on how to jungle efficiently. However, you can begin stomping your way out of low elo by utilizing our extensive catalog of jungle courses that are going to teach you everything you need to know to succeed as a jungler, which will have you speed running any game below diamond in no time. And that's just for jungle. Your mid lane OP tier Diana pick becomes actually unstoppable when you know all the essentials of mid lane thanks to the new 6-part mid lane series over on our platform that our top 10 challenger player Strumpist has tirelessly worked on exclusive to our members. Our tier list gets you the right champions, SkillCapped gets you the right skills. And we're so confident it works. If you don't climb 5 divisions while actively using the platform, you literally don't pay a single cent. So why hold yourself back this season and finally get the rank you deserve? And with that being said, let's get into it. So a top lane champ we featured in our OP builds video for this patch who we want to highlight in the tier list as well for those who may have missed it is Varus. So believe it or not, top lane Varus is in a better spot than bot lane Varus right now. And if you're building him correctly, he becomes even more insane. With experimental hexplate buff for 25.16, it's a really powerful rush item on top lane Varus for a few different reasons. The first is that the item makes it so that Varus's all-in power whenever he has his R available is incredibly deadly. You now get 50% attack speed from the hexplate passive, and you don't even need to land your R in order to gain the stats. You gain the bonus stats for simply just pressing R, so you can completely whiff your Varus R and still gain that massive boost in DPS for a whole 8 seconds. The second reason hexplate works great for Varus is because the item provides 30 ability haste for your R cooldown. Varus is 10 times the champion when he has his R up, so receiving all that haste is a huge boost to his consistent dueling power. And then lastly, the 450 health that the item provides is incredible when playing Varus top, because most top lane champs are going to be melee characters who are looking to jump right on top of you, so having that added durability gives you a little more wiggle room and you don't have to position absolutely perfectly to win duels. So top lane Varus is definitely a champ worth picking up for 25.16, as the complete core build will consist of a hexplate rush into Rageblade second and Terminus third. So it turns out that all this time, Rumble was actually a completely garbage champion if played on red side, while actually being quite strong if played on blue side, because with the bug fix coming through this patch so that Rumble no longer deals less damage on red side, his win rate has shot up a whole 4%. This change alone has taken Rumble from being one of the worst champions in solo queue to one of the best, as he's 100% worth picking up now in 25.16, and just an all-around way more consistently powerful champion. If you're looking for a blind pick top lane champion to spam, then there's honestly nothing much better than Rumble, as you can pick him into almost anything and at least go even in lane. Most of the time you're going to be able to win lane quite hard though, because the lane bully strength that Rumble has up against a lot of melee top laners is really hard for them to match. So from C tier all the way up to S tier in a single patch, Rumble is back for solo queue in 25.16. So for the top lane tier list, as we reach the midway mark of the patch, Olaf is definitely one of the best top laners right now, as the hexplate buffs have pushed him into a very powerful spot. Ravenous Hydra Rush into hexplate second is looking like the most competitive build for Olaf this patch, and then it's situational from then on out. Speaking of hexplate, Mordekaiser is a new champ who has been finding success with the item in 25.16. If you watched our pre-patch tier list, then you should know that Mord received a 120% bonus AD ratio on his Q damage, and this has made going for an AD item like hexplate a lot stronger. Originally, we theorized that Spear of Shojin would be the item to pop up on Mord this patch, and although it doesn't look completely terrible so far, hexplate is definitely the AD item finding the best results. Whether or not hexplate is actually more optimal than just straight up building AP Bruiser is tough to say this early on. The core build played the most with hexplate right now is a Riftmaker Rush into hexplate second and Rylai's third. Now, despite the intended nerfs to Warwick top lane for this patch, turns out they've been pretty neutral. We moved Warwick down from OP into S during pre-patch, and it looks like that was the correct move, as he hasn't lost enough power to warrant a push into A. And then along with Rumble, Singed is another champ who was dealing less damage on red side last patch, but now that the bug has been fixed for this patch, he's finding way more success. Singed didn't see quite as egregious of a win rate jump as Rumble, but it still went up around 2%, and Singed was already in a better spot than Rumble before the bug fix, so he is now one of the best solo queue top laners as a result. So we told you guys in the pre-patch tier list to keep an eye on Kraken Rush Master Yi, as it could become more optimal than Blade of the Ruined King, and it's turned out that way. Kraken was changed on Yi for this patch so that his Q provides him with 1 stack of the 3-hit passive, which allows for Yi to burst a bit quicker on that item spike. It's really not even close now analytically between Blade and Kraken, as Kraken is now sitting up around 53% as a rush, while Blade of the Ruined King is down at 51.5%. Items have near identical play rates as well, so it's not like Kraken is just being played less and skewing things because of a lower sample size. It's not just Kraken Slayer that has become better on Master Yi either, as experimental Hexblade is now a very good third purchase for him. So a new core build that you can look to try on Yi for 25.16 consists of a Kraken Dragon Rush into Rage Blade 2nd and Hexplate 3rd. So with all these positives from SG in 25.16, he's going to be moved up into OP tier for mid-patch, as he's performing very well throughout all elo brackets. So with Morgana getting some damage added to her W for this patch, her jungle win rate and play rate have both shot up. Morgana jungle has always been a viable pick in the past, just never really played all that much, but with the buff, she's actually now in a pretty powerful spot. The clear is very simple to execute and very fast as well, as you max your W out first, and it does a lot of the work for you. You can go a couple of different directions with the build on Morgana jungle, as Blackfire Torch Rush is the most popular. However, Liandry's Rush is what's been winning the most. Liandry's and Dazanya's and Rylai's is the 3-item core that you should try. And then for the rune page, it's Dark Harvest that is working the best, along with Inspiration for secondaries. So Morgana is going to be added to the jungle tier list and placed in A as a good jungle pickup. If you guys have been on social media throughout the patch, then you've probably already seen how broken Crit Sylas was at the start of 25.16. Riot has gone ahead and hotfix nerfed the champ, as his passive was dealing more damage than intended when playing him crit. When played with the crit build, Sylas was without question an OP jungle champ, but with AP builds, he's definitely not as powerful. The standard Rocket Belt Rush build is performing decent, but not at any sort of exceptional level. So with the crit setup getting nerfed and AP being in a much weaker spot, we're going to be keeping Sylas in the jungle B tier for now. So the jungle meta is a lot different from where it was last patch, as we now have Volibear and Master Yi in the OP tier. Volibear is the one jungler that you really can't go wrong with right now, as he was already such a powerful champ prior to this patch, and with so many junglers around him getting nerfed, he just gains a ton in relative strength. Not jungle was buffed for this patch, but unlike Sylas and Qiyana, he's not performing at a very good level at all so far. Nautilus is down under a 45% win rate so far, so it does look like Riot's going to need to buff it a bit more in order for it to be a more competitive solo queue pick. It is looking like out of all the junglers who were nerfed for this patch, Nocturne ended up taking the biggest beating. It makes sense because he's got 2 nerfs while most other junglers ended up getting 1 nerf, so Noc is going to be moved down 1 extra tier from S into A. And then all the other junglers who were nerfed for this patch ended up meeting our expectations as to how much power they would end up losing, so there's no further movement on the tier list for the likes of Trundle, Jarvan, Shinzao, Warwick, or Viego. So mid lane didn't receive very many changes for this patch, but that doesn't mean there aren't a few new picks popping up, as Twitch mid lane has started to receive more recognition. The play rate of Twitch mid and solo queue has been on a steady rise over the past few patches, going from down below 0.2% in 25.12 and now climbing up to 1% in 25.16. Win rate of Twitch mid is looking quite solid as well, sitting up above 51%, and although we'll never see the champ played in pro, as a solo queue pick, he can be really devastating. The whole idea behind Twitch mid is that you just throw out your W on the wave, wait for your passive to stack up, and then activate E to instantly clear the wave and then look for roaming opportunities. You do this by rushing Nashers on Twitch, as your passive and E have AP ratios. It was back in 25.11 where AP Twitch actually got buffed, and although that hasn't translated into any success with AP builds down in the bot lane, mid lane Twitch is a different story. Unlike bot lane Twitch, where you max your Q out second, it's W max second that will work best when playing this AP style of Twitch. The 2-item core will always be Nashers and Durabadons, and then 3rd item depends on the game. You can take Banshees, Zanyas, or Shadow Flame based on what you think will be best for what the enemy comp consists of. For the rune page on Twitch mid, you don't want to take anything like Dark Harvest or Comet, even though you are building him AP, as it's still press the attack that's going to work best. With the changes to Viego in 25.16 to where his Q damage is up and healing against minions and champions is also up, he's been finding a little more success in the solo lane. More so for mid than top though. Top is sitting down below a 44% win rate, so definitely not in a viable state at all, but for mid lane, Viego has been performing much better, albeit still at a more underwhelming level at around 48%. Melee matchups are pretty good for Viego mid right now, but he's really having a tough time when going up against ranged champs. So if you can use Viego as a counter pick into other melee mids, then he can be a solid pickup, but as a blind pick, it's not looking like he's worth it right now, and as a result, we're going to be placing him in the B tier. So for the mid lane in 25.16, there was only one traditional mid lane pick who got buffed, and it was Qiyana. Qiyana has seen a greater uptick in power for mid lane than we were initially expecting, so she's being moved up into S tier for mid patch, and is now one of the best solo queue assassins alongside Diana. A champ who used to be played as a more niche mid lane pick in the past is actually looking quite solid again for 25.16, being Rumble. Against popular melee mids like Yasuo, Sylas, Zed, Akali, and Katarina, Rumble can play very well into them, so if you're someone who likes to pull out those more unknown picks, it's a champ well worth considering. And then speaking of underrated champs, Brand is yet another who has become stronger for 25.16, as his Q stun duration went up and R cooldown was reduced, so he's back in a great spot as a mid laner too. This is definitely one of the more fun patches we have seen in a while, because it's really opened things up for these lesser known champs to rise in popularity and add a bit of variety and freshness to the game if you're someone who doesn't like playing the exact same meta picks every single patch. So if you're an ADC or support main, then this patch was definitely a lot less appealing to you, as there were no changes issued to either role as significant as what we saw for top, jungle, and and mid. As a result, jumping right into the ADC tier list, we are going to continue to rate Jinx and Sivir as the best solo queue ADCs of the patch. Riot has actually done a really good job at balancing the ADC meta as of late because there are a ton of strong S tier champs in and around the same power level that you can look to pull out. Kalista was actually buffed for this patch, however, the changes did absolutely nothing in regards to boosting her power level. Some players have been experimenting with AP variant builds on Kalista, but it's looking like they are nothing more than for fun builds right now, as Nashor's Tooth as an item on Kalista has under a 40% win rate right now. AD with Blade of the Ruined King Rush into Rage Blade 2nd is definitely still the best way to play her, but even then, she's still a weak champ in relation to all the other ADCs. Varus was the other ADC adjusted for this patch, and it's looking like the changes have landed negatively for him. Top lane Varus has been finding more success because you actually max your W out first on him and take full advantage of the W buff. If you're playing Q max Varus though, then he's without question in a weaker state relative to last patch. W max first is what's been winning the most on Varus for 25.16. However, only 7% of bot lane Varus players are actually maxing the champion in that manner. So if you're wanting to play bot Varus right now, then on hit with W max is the way to go, as Q max with lethality has become a lot weaker. So for the first time all season long, we've had some Lulu nerfs that have actually led to a significant drop in her power. All the other times Lulu has been nerfed this season, her win rate never budged more than 0.5%. But with the 25.16 nerfs coming through, we've seen just under a 2% drop. It was Lulu's E cooldown, damage, and shielding that was nerfed, and it makes sense that this has hurt her on a more significant level, since it's the spell that provides the most consistent impact. The previous couple of times that Riot nerfed Lulu, they had targeted her R cooldown and Q damage, which just aren't as impactful as nerfing her E. So for the first time in a long time, Lulu is going to be moved out of the upper echelon of the support tier list, as we are dropping her down to A. So with Lulu moving down in priority for this patch, it opens things up for other enchanters like Milio, Sona, Nami, Soraka, and Janna to leapfrog her in relative power. Besides Lulu, Rel is another support who has actually ended up losing a good chunk of power from her nerf. In terms of melee supports, Rel is now dropped down to being in the bottom percentile, so we are going to be adjusting her into B tier for mid-patch. Leona is definitely the melee support that is shining the most right now, as nerfs to Braum, Alistar, and Rel have been extremely good for Leona. Those three melee supports are who Leona can struggle more against, so with all of them becoming a lot weaker in the span of the last few patches, Leona has gained a lot of indirect power. The Morgana buff has turned out as expected so far, with the change not influencing her power as a support at all. Morgana support does not max her W out first, so you get a lot less value from the buff compared to jungle or mid lane. And then Brand was one support who's seen a small increase in strength for this patch, enough to warrant a push up into A tier. Q stun duration going up and R cooldown dropping are both great buffs for Brand support, so he's still lower priority than the likes of Zyra and Vel'Koz when it comes down to mage supports, but worth considering again if you are a Brand player. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit skillcapped.com and see the difference. So that's going to be all for the 25.16 update on the solo queue tier list for every single role. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.